Hi there. Welcome to Trauma Informed Leadership with Ignite in the Community. My name is Mandy Cordes. I am the founder and president of shiftsolutions, which is an organization that provides training with a trauma informed lens for leaders in all areas. If you want to learn more about what we do at Shift, you can find us on Facebook at Shift Solutions, or you can go to our website shiftsolutions.mn.com. Today, with keeping with the theme for June of more love, more pride, more hope, more equality, we're going to talk about trauma. And I know that that seems a little off center, with just the theme being more of everything, and then to kind of bring in this whole trauma. But I would challenge you to think about the only way we can get to more is to acknowledge the now. And sometimes that now includes trauma. And I would even dare to say, not even sometimes, but all the time people have trauma. And so we're going to unpack what that word is today. And we're also going to talk about the different types of trauma and how they might manifest. So, um, to just kind of jump in, trauma is really an event or series of events that um, that you experience that has a negative effect on your functioning and your well-being. And that's the really big broad definition. There are several different types of trauma, and they affect us in different severities, and they affect us in different ways, and each individual person is affected differently. So these are just general descriptions and terms, but definitely there's gray in everything. So, the types of trauma we're going to talk about are acute trauma, chronic trauma, historical trauma, secondary trauma, and little t trauma. So, acute trauma is very typically what people think of when we say the word trauma. That is one big incident that happens to us that affects how we are moving forward. I was robbed at gunpoint. I had abuse happen to me. So those things, they definitely affect our mental health, our physical health, our social health, and they shake our foundation. That is acute trauma. Chronic trauma is a series of a negative event that happens over a length of time. So while acute trauma is a one-time thing, chronic is I was in a domestic violence relationship for 3 years. I had childhood violence happen to me while I was growing up for many years. And that chronic trauma can happen in a couple of weeks, a couple of months, a couple of years, but it's really that repeated trauma exposure over a series of time. The next one is historical trauma. Historical trauma is trauma that happens to a large group or a group of people or population that then affects that population as a whole. So if you think of slavery or the injustices in the LGBTQIA plus community, these are all historical traumas that then are passed down to the future generations within that population and affects how they're treated, affects how they interpret things, and affects their emotional health and their well-being. Secondary trauma is when you see something happen. So I saw someone get held up by gunpoint. I saw someone, have I saw someone die, that kind of thing, where you're witnessing the trauma. It's not actually happening to you, but it still is going to affect your emotional health and physical health, and going to require you to engage your coping skills, whether that be seeing a professional, a therapist, or a psychologist, or having medication, or pulling in some of your independent use tools like journaling or music therapies, meditation. And this video is really going to be focused more on just defining the types of trauma and less on the tools we can use while we are working through trauma and if we have experienced trauma, which will come at a later date. But just really right now, we're going to be focused on the types because I think it's important to know the common words, know the language, so that then you can evaluate and analyze what's going on around you and be able to identify it. If you can't identify what's happening, it's going to be much harder to address and improve and resolve. So the last one we're going to talk about is the trauma that people often overlook or dismiss, and that is called little t trauma. Little t trauma are the events that happen in regular everyday life, so not held up by gunpoint, but I lost a job. I had to relocate suddenly and unprepared. These are events that are considered normal in culture and in society and in our communities, but at the same time still affect our well being. Our cortisol, the stress hormone, goes up, our muscles get tight. We may filter things that we take in, whether they be conversations or interactions, in a different way when we are working through those traumas, which is exactly what they are. I think it's super important to not minimize their effect. Moving several times over and over in a short period of time, that causes us to have difficulties with relationships, and it might increase our chances of depression, or our mood might not be as stable. That's normal and okay. And the ability to acknowledge the fact that your body and your emotions are going through trauma is really important. I think sometimes we as collectively, as a society as a whole, can get stuck in this idea of, oh, I have no reason to be upset because this person over here has it so much worse than me. My thing was just that I lost my job, but yet they can't feed their family, so why should I be upset? And that really is a dangerous way of thinking because it minimizes the feelings that you have and devalues yourself. And ultimately, we all have value, no matter what. And you acknowledging your trauma or acknowledging other people's traumas does not devalue the traumas that other people or you go through. They're all difficult. They all affect us. But it doesn't make it easier to work through trauma if another person says, well, your trauma is worse than mine, so I'm going to put my mental health on the back seat. It doesn't work like that. It's not like the world can only handle this much at a time, and so you're going to sacrifice for person A. So today I would really challenge you to kind of take an inventory on how you doing, how you feeling, what's going on in your body, because that's really kind of your body shows you symptoms that maybe you're not ready to acknowledge. So I know I tend to hold my stress in my shoulders and my neck. So the minute that my shoulders go up and I start to feel that tense, I have to do an emotional check, a healthiness check, to see what's going on, that my body is reacting and giving me a message, communicating with me on where my mental health is. So I would just encourage you to do a check, kind of do a body scan, do a mental health scan, and then kind of look at what's going on in your life, and would that be considered a little T trauma? Or are there things in your past that are coming up and coloring the way that you act and receive things in your present? If you have any questions, I understand that this is kind of a big topic. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to kind of unpack this a little further. And I hope you have a wonderful June. Talk to you soon.